The crisp dawn sun spilled through the window of Michael Abernathy's modest home, illuminating the rustic kitchen where he often concocted hearty meals. Clutching a warm mug of coffee, he stepped outside to greet the day, only to find a shock awaiting him. A bright orange notice affixed to his weathered front gate, aggressively taped in place. The bold black letters read, "Notice of fine, $500 per day until failure to comply." A knot tightened in his stomach as he scanned the accompanying legalese beneath. More than a simple wrongdoing, the wording declared him an offender, violating community regulations under Clause 8.4, unauthorized fencing without approval. Michael stood there in his well-worn boots, coffee forgotten and hands trembling. His ranch sprawled over an expansive 15 acres on the fringes of Evergreen Valley, where mature trees surrounded him, horses grazed peacefully, and mountains rose majestically in the distance. For the last 2 decades, this land had been a sanctuary for him, housing memories of laughter, sweat, and the idyllic life he had built after leaving the city behind. The brown wooden fence encircling his property served an essential purpose: to defend against the coyotes that had plagued local livestock for years. Constructed by his own hands, it was not just a boundary, it was a labor of love. The revelation that he was being punished for protecting his home struck Michael as absurd. To make matters worse, he had never been involved in any homeowners association, not even once. As he stared dumbfounded at the document, he noticed typographical errors, including his name spelled incorrectly, further indicating the negligence behind this notice. For a moment, he allowed himself a cynical laugh. This had to be a mistake, an unfortunate mix-up. But as he looked at the ominous phone number on the notice, dread settled in. He steeled himself, dialed the number, and thus began an incredulous journey that would unravel the very fabric of his life. To understand how he arrived at this point, let's rewind a month, back to a time when his most pressing worries revolved around a malfunctioning tractor and a mischievous goat named Millie, who had developed a penchant for raiding his vegetable garden. Life had been comforting in its routine. Michael was a 54-year-old widower residing in Evergreen Valley since tragedy had struck a decade ago. After losing his wife, he sought solace away from the bustle of town life. He acquired the ranch to fulfill her dream of living on open land, away from the concrete jungles they once inhabited. On a typical morning, he would rise before the first ray of sun, tend to the animals, whip up breakfast, and spend his days immersed in the hard yet honest work of ranching. One day in early March, as he carried a heavy sack of feed toward the barn, he spotted a shiny white SUV parked awkwardly at the end of his gravel driveway. The Florida plates piqued his curiosity. A woman had rolled down her window, embarrassment blooming on her cheeks. "Excuse me, is this Evergreen Meadows?" she asked. Michael shook his head apologetically. "Nope, this is Abernathy Ranch. Evergreen Meadows is about a 10-mile ride down the road." The couple exchanged sheepish smiles before thanking him. As he watched them drive away, he noted that this was the first time in a long while he had seen city folk venture so far. In the weeks that followed, however, more and more visitors appeared at his doorstep. Most of them donned pristine sneakers, clutching lattes as they snapped photographs of the scenic landscape. One fateful day, Michael woke to discover a series of wooden stakes protruding from a parcel of land bordering his property, each topped with vibrant pink flags flapping in the cool breeze. A sign proclaimed it to be Lot 15, Future Home Site. "Wait a minute," he muttered, scratching his head. He hadn't sold any of his land or spoken to any real estate agents in years. A sense of foreboding settled in as he dug through his documents later that evening. He had the original deed, unencumbered and clear, a reflection of the hard work and money he'd poured into this sanctuary. The following day, determination propelled him to town, where he sought out Linda, a longtime clerk at the county office. Linda had an uncanny ability to recall land records like clockwork. "Oh, those stakes," she said, peering through her glasses. "A developer named Clearwater Properties has been acquiring plots in the area, and they seem to be confused about boundaries." "Can they just put stakes on my property without permission?" he gasped. "Not unless they intend to trespass," she replied, shaking her head. "I'll flag it for review, but you might want to consider putting up a fence." Taking her advice to heart, Michael worked tirelessly to erect a beautiful wooden fence around the front of his ranch. He even painted a wooden sign that read, "Abernathy Ranch, established 2001. Little did he know how quickly the tides of fate would shift. Just 2 days later, formal notices arrived at his doorstep, starting a surge of penalties. The first was hand-delivered by a man dressed sharply in a suit. The man, flipping through a folder with a smug expression, informed Michael he had violated community standards set by Evergreen Meadows. "What community?" Michael protested, baffled. "There's no Evergreen Meadows here, only Abernathy Ranch." In frustration, he glanced at the folder, which marked his land as Lot 15 within the new development. After the man departed, disbelief washed over Michael as he dialed the HOA number. An indifferent woman named Karen answered, humming through her monotone. "What's your lot number?" she asked. "Lot number? I don't have a lot number. This is Michael Abernathy, and I own the ranch along County Road 5. "Ah, if you're within Evergreen Meadows, you're subject to HOA laws." "This is a mistake," he shouted into the phone, his heart racing. "I've spent thousands and countless hours on that fence, and now you're telling me I need to take it down?" She simply suggested he take it up with their legal team, leaving Michael livid. The next morning he was jolted from his restless sleep by surveyors appearing on his property with clipboards, working on behalf of Clearwater Development Group. "This isn't happening," he thought, marching outside in his plaid pajamas. He confronted the crew, chest tightening with indignation. "What do you think you're doing?" The lead surveyor, a young man in an ill-fitting safety vest, squinted at him. "Good morning, sir. We're here for the utility lines to service Lot 15 for Clearwater." "Lot 15? Michael's eyes flared. "You mean Abernathy Ranch? This is my land, not yours." The surveyor merely blinked in confusion, flipping through their documents. "Sorry, man. We were told to be here," he replied, weaker by the moment. From that day on, strange occurrences turned unbearable. Michael continued to unearth evidence that not only were his rights being encroached upon, but the very land he loved was under attack by a shadowy group that sold it without his consent. He replayed the scene of what had just transpired, gripping his coffee mug tighter as he contemplated the implications. He reached out to his former attorney, a revisionist named Tom Richards, who now spent his days exploring quagmires of legality. The somber response he received was not reassuring. "This sounds like land fraud, plain and simple," Tom explained. "But what does that mean?" Michael asked. Anxiety churned in his gut. "Someone may have forged documents claiming ownership or misrepresented property lines," Tom detailed, his voice echoing with gravity. "It's not common, but it happens, especially as developers hunt for land." Dread settled further as Michael processed the gravity of the situation. One sleepless night turned into another, haunted by visions of bulldozers ravaging his garden. encroaching on the resting places of his beloved pets, and strangers inhabiting once sacred ground he had shared with his late wife. The following morning, he stormed back into the county clerk's office, determined to discover the truth. Linda was already waiting for him, sympathy in her eyes. "I've compiled paperwork related to Clearwater. They filed a subdivision roughly 6 months ago, which included your ranch," she said, passing him a manila folder weighed down by official-looking documents. "No." His heart sank as he flipped through the papers, spotting a signature on a title transfer. "But I never signed anything," he insisted. "Correct. That signature's not yours, Michael," she replied, her brow furrowing with concern. "It appears someone forged your name." A violent storm brewed within him, one that swelled deep in his chest like a wound reopened. How can this happen? How did this slip past? Systems can be faulty, especially when dealing with numerous filings and big developments, she replied apologetically. Michael grieved not only the theft of his land, but the hollow reminder of the world around him, a world bent on erasing his existence. Upon returning to his ranch, he was met by a terrifying sight. More orange notices taped to his gate. This time they had multiplied, threatening fines for each day the fence remained. That realization ignited a fire within him. This was no longer a mistake. It was war. Fury propelled him to contact the HOA again. "I need to speak to your board," Michael demanded through clenched teeth. "This is a case of fraud, and I will not stand by while you trespass upon my property." Contrary to his expectations, the response was met with a feeble, "I can relay your concerns." He ended the call, feelings of desperation clawing him from within as he ruminated over the walls closing in from every side. The following day, with the weight of the world on his shoulders, he documented every detail around his property. The FCA had to see the truth. A few days later, a commotion drew his attention to the driveway. Another truck rolled in, only this time the occupants were decidedly different. The silver vehicle belonged to the same couple he had encountered weeks before, now on the verge of becoming his neighbors. "Hey, you're back!" the young man exclaimed, stepping out. But the gleam he had once held now flickered with uncertainty. "We bought Lot 15 from Clearwater, but—" His wife glanced up uneasily. "We're having second thoughts. Can we come in?" Michael led them to his kitchen, where the air grew thick with tension. The duo sat at the table, their hands clasped nervously as they began to share their story, recounting how they believed Clearwater had swindled them just as heartlessly as they aimed to do to him. They handed over a USB drive full of documents, which sparked a flicker of hope in Michael's chest. "This is our proof," the young man said resolutely. "We'll testify." Just like that, the couple transformed from potential adversaries to allies in this battle against a corporate giant, igniting a promising flame of action among the ranch's dwindling community. As the sun dipped on the horizon, casting shadows around them, they gathered around a fire pit, sharing stories and laughter, maybe even a few old songs. But the peaceful moments were short-lived. In the quiet of night, just as they felt a sense of camaraderie, a phone call interrupted. "They filed a counter-motion," Tom declared grimly. "They're trying to overturn the restraining order. If they succeed, they can start tearing down your house tomorrow." The calm of the evening shattered as fear overwhelmed Michael. He felt time pause, as if the world around him had come to a standstill. But Tom's determined voice pulled him back. "We've got to get to Denver and fight back. We won't let them take away your home without a battle." So it was. By midnight, they set off toward the courthouse, armed with a trove of evidence and raw determination clawing at their hearts. Tears pressed against Michael's eyelids as he reflected on all he had lost and all he continued to lose. But the driving force of hope propelled them through the darkness, steering them away from despair. At 8:30 in the morning, the austere courtroom greeted them with high wood-paneled walls and a silent judge whose eyes hadn't smiled in years. The tension heated between them as they prepared for a showdown. Clearwater's lawyer, the very picture of smug confidence, stood with shocking ease, spinning tales of legality and justice. Yet as Michael stood, testimony boiling in his soul, the spirit of his late wife whispered through the air. This land was theirs, their history entwined with its essence. For every gainful moment of truth shared, he felt the weight lift, reminding him that his fight was not a solitary one. The courtroom became a battleground as he took a deep breath and unleashed the truth buried deep within. "Your Honor," he began, measured yet confident. "I have lived here for 20 years, and my land is more than just a plot. It is my home, my life. The signatures on these papers are forged, and I have the evidence to prove it." The air crackled with anticipation as the judge scrutinized the documents spread before him, shifting the dynamics of the room altogether as it settled from mundane bureaucratic decision-making to the potential of justice. One witness after another provided an avalanche of support, painting a vivid landscape of Michael's journey and echoing the same sentiment. This property was not merely a commodity. It was home, real-life memories forged into every fence post and vegetable garden. And then, like an icebreaker carving through Arctic waters, the judge spoke. Motion denied. Michael's heart surged in disbelief. As the celebration erupted around him, he found his feet, bouncing to greet freedom for now. But seconds later, reality cut through the jubilation. Clearwater had filed a counter-appeal. As the sun dipped below the horizon upon returning home, Michael found a gathering waiting at his gate, local ranchers, neighbors, and even journalists who'd caught wind of the story. Sheriff Lucas, a loyal friend, stepped forward, problem in hand. "This community stands with you, Michael," he said through a warm smile. But as he handed Michael a new envelope, the fortune shifted once more. An ominous whisper of the ongoing fight nested inside. As challenges lingered on the horizon, Michael Abernathy vowed not to waver, fueled by the spirit of loved ones before him, determined to protect the legacy bound within the soil of his land. The road ahead would not be easy, but he knew this much. He wouldn't be facing it alone.